Today's video is brought to you by Card Kingdom. And right now you can get this sweet Scoop Soldier sticker when you order over on cardkingdom.com. Just mention in your order notes that you want a Scoop Soldier sticker when you check out. Commander 2021 pre-constructed decks have been revealed, and with it comes another round of my Precon upgrades. We finally arrived at the final Precon of the series, Silverquill Statement, which is certainly the most unique and divisive Precon of the set. We're going to do a thorough analysis of the deck and then use all that information to recommend 10 card upgrades that can be purchased for under $20. Unlike most Precons, which build upon a well-developed popular archetype like Spellslinger, Life Gain, or Artifacts while giving them a new twist, Silverquill Statement's primary theme is built around an oddball archetype, politics. The goal of a political deck is to have your opponents spend their resources killing each other, essentially doing the dirty work of winning the game for you. The Precon accomplishes this various ways. The first way is by bribing select opponents to do your bidding by offering free resources, letting them draw cards with Secret Rendezvous, reanimating creatures with Incarnation Technique, or giving them treasure tokens with Tempting Contract. The second way is encouraging them to attack each other while leaving you alone, such as giving them free creatures with Combat Calligrapher, pumping up creatures with Nils Discipline Enforcer while preventing them from attacking you with them, or offering to give creatures non-attacking you Double Strike with Duelist Heritage. The face commander of the deck, Breena the Demagogue, does a great job representing what this Precon is all about. This little birdie encourages both you and your opponents to be attacking your opponents whenever possible. The attacker gets to draw a card, while you get to put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature you control. So Breena helps the entire table, but it always helps you the most as you're the only one getting counters and your opponents have to attack someone that isn't you to get that card draw. Breena isn't just an ordinary card draw engine though. Her main strength is the ridiculous amount of +1/+1 counters she can generate each turn cycle. Assuming you're in a 4-player free-for-all game, Breena can be passively netting you up to 6 +1/+1 counters each turn cycle, which is completely absurd. Now the Precon doesn't have a lot of counter support, only a handful of cards like Fane the Broker, Felisa Fang of Silverquill, and Elite Scale Guard, but even so, giving your creatures an extra combined 6 power and toughness each turn cycle is a ton for a 3-mana commander. Breena is the perfect leader for this political Precon, so we're keeping her in the command zone when we do our upgrades. Alright, now let's check out the deck list and see how well it accomplishes its goals. Right out of the box, Silverquill Statement has 31 cards that I'd consider fitting the main theme of politics. There are 21 cards to give an opponent resources, and 10 more cards to deter opponents from attacking you. There's also a +1/+1 counter sub-theme, with 10 cards that add counters and a few of those supporting counters, with some overlap with the main political theme. The deck's mana curve is a bit high, but it's actually pretty good compared to the other Precons of the set. Now that we've glanced at the list as a whole, let's take a look at the deck's ratios. As I often explain in my Budget Commander videos, every time I build a rough draft of a deck, I use a checklist to make sure the deck has all of its fundamentals covered, such as mana, interaction, card advantage, and so on. This gives me a reference point to compare to the deck and see which areas may need improvement. My general ratio is 50 mana, lands and ramp, usually a 37-13 split, 10 card draw, cards that net you 2 or more cards in hand, 8 targeted removal, split between creature, artifact, enchantment removal, and counter magic, 3 board wipes, creature light decks might want 1 more, and creature heavy decks might want 1 less, 2 graveyard recursion, 2 flexible tutors, at higher budgets though I recommend more tutors, 1 graveyard hate, and 1 finisher. Something that can win games the turn you cast it without too much setup. That's always my starting point, which is then tweaked to suit the individual deck strategy and further tweaks with playtesting. I always find this checklist immensely useful to figure out some quick ways to improve the deck in question. Now let's see what the rough ratios are for Silverquill Statement and how it compares. I count 53 mana, 40 lands and 13 ramp, 6 card draw, 6 targeted removal, 4 board wipes, 5 graveyard recursion, 0 flexible tutors, 2 graveyard hate, and 1-ish finishers. Honestly, they're all beaters and they all kind of suck. The ratios look decent at a glance, though a closer look at the actual cards makes it obvious that there's some fundamental issues with this precon. Regardless, we definitely want to bump up the amount of card draw and targeted removal in the deck, along with enhancing the deck's finishers. The next step is to analyze the individual cards, identifying the worst ones to swap out for our upgrades, which I do in the accompanying article linked below. But for this video, we're just going to skip the card analysis and jump straight into the good stuff, the upgrades. Let's get started. So first we're going to upgrade the deck's threats. This precon is all about having your opponents kill each other with their own threats, however we still want to have some decent pressure on our side of the board as well. So we're going to take out Zetalpa Primal Dawn, which is trying to fit that theme of being a big finisher in the late game, but it's just overpriced. We have no way of cheating its huge mana cost, no reanimation, and there's very minimal synergy in this deck. And we're going to take it out for Shadrick's Silverquill. This is the single best inclusion in the deck. It does everything we want to be doing in this precon. It's political in that the triggered ability helps both a target opponent and ourselves. It's decent pressure all by itself, an evasive flyer dealing 4 damage in the air, and works really well with +1/+1 counters because of double strike. And it's very versatile. It can draw us cards, it can make us tokens, or it could just pump all of our board once we have a sizable board state. And for 5 mana, this card is ridiculously efficient at what it does. Then we're going to be taking out Gideon, Champion of Justice. This is kind of like an anti-political card, which is a really weird inclusion here, because Gideon essentially puts a massive target on our own Planeswalker and will force opponents from attacking each other to attacking him, which is not what we want to be doing in this deck. And the payoff here is just not really good. He's never going to ultimate or anything like that. So we're taking him out for Cathar's Crusade. This deck is all about generating tokens and, more importantly, having +1/+1 counters on our creatures. And Cathar's Crusade is one of the best go wide anthems in the entire deck, and it happens to load up our creatures with +1/+1 counters. So those are the exact things we're looking for a finisher. Next, we're taking out Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts. This card is a good political card in theory. It does an excellent job at deterring attacks, and it has both vigilance and protection from creatures, so it can get aggressive on our own turns. However, Teysa does cost 7 mana, and we have no ways of cheating that huge mana cost, so it's just too much mana for what she does. We're going to take it out for Shale, Dean of Radiance, and the backside is Embrose. The front side, Shale, is a great way of being a late game finisher for the deck, just efficiently giving counters on all our creatures once we've assembled a bunch of tokens. And the backside, Embrose, is more appealing in my opinion, because it can act as targeted removal, but also is going to be generating us a ton of card advantage, as more often than not, all of our creatures are going to have +1/+1 counters on them, so whenever a creature of ours dies, we're going to draw a card off it. Speaking of card draw, we're going to also be throwing in one of the coolest card draw engines in the deck, Blood Tracker. When this card leaves the battlefield, we draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it, and with Breena on the battlefield, we can put up to 6 +1/+1 counters on it with Breena alone per turn cycle. So by the time Blood Tracker does die, we're going to be drawing a ton of cards off it. And we're going to be taking out Guardian Archon for it. Again, this is on the high end of the mana curve at 6 mana. We have no way of cheating on that mana cost. And while it is a 5/5 beater in the air, which is kind of decent, and it is a deterrent, so kind of fits the political theme, it just costs way too much mana in this deck, and we really want to lower the mana curve here. Next, we're going to be taking out one of my favorite new cards from Commander 2021, and that's Stinging Study. Now, this card is an insanely good card. It's super efficient card draw if your commander costs, 4 or more mana value. But Breena only costs 3, and drawing 3 cards for 5 mana, even at instant speed, is just not good enough here. So we're going to replace it with better card draw, Promise of Power. Instead of paying 5 to draw 3, we're going to be paying 5 to draw 5, and it even has an alternate ability to entwine it if we have extra mana available to make a giant demon, which is just nice in the late game as well. Next, we're going to upgrade one of the board wipes in the deck. Deathbringer Regent, again, it costs 7 mana. It's a cool asymmetrical board wipe. It leaves a creature on the battlefield but it's 7 mana. It's just too much, and we need to lower the deck's mana curve. So we're going to take it out for Austere Command. Now this card is still kind of expensive. It's 6 mana as opposed to 7, so it's not much of a discount here. However, it's just way more flexible removal. It can remove artifacts, enchantments, and we can even protect most of our creatures or all of our creatures by destroying creatures with a converted mana cost that doesn't affect our own creatures. So it's super flexible, super effective, and it's just uncontested in terms of a 6 mana board wipe. Next, we're going to cut out the weakest political card in the deck, Vow of Duty. Vow is just outclassed these days by the Impetus cycle, which both of the Impetus cards are in our deck. It doesn't force our opponents to attack with the creature, so while it is kind of protection, it doesn't really help us enough to justify a card slot. And we're going to take it out for a very powerful staple removal spell, Council's Judgment, which works even better in our deck because it's a political deck. So we actually have the potential to work with our opponents to take out multiple permanents with this ability. Then we're going to upgrade the ramp a little bit by replacing Skullship's sponsor with Talisman of Hierarchy. The sponsor is just not very good. It lets everybody catch up to the person with the highest amount of lands on the battlefield, but this precon already runs a bunch of ways to do that already outside of the sponsor, so it kind of eats up in the same ramp space as some of our other cards, and it helps all of our opponents indiscriminately. I just don't really like this card, and I think it just costs too much mana for what it does, and it eats up some of our other ramp spaces. So we're just going to replace it for a classic ramp card, Talisman of Hierarchy. It's a 2 mana rock that enters the battlefield untapped and can tap for both our colors. What's there not to like here? Now, the deck runs 40 lands, and I think we can actually go down at least 1 land. So we're going to be taking out Temple of the False God, and we're going to be replacing it for another cheap staple targeted removal spell, the Spark, 2 mana, instant speed, exiles, and very flexible. This card is just a staple in Orzhov decks all around. And then finally, we're going to swap Study Hall out, which is just the least impressive new C21 land that I've ever seen. It doesn't tap for colored mana, and the activated ability is just something that you just won't want to be using very often. And we're going to replace it for an MDFC, Malakir Rebirth. This is probably one of the most mana efficient MDFCs ever printed. It's protection when we need it, and it's a lane drop when we need it. It's just awesome. Malakir Rebirth is amazing. So here's all the cards we're swapping into the deck, and here's all the cards we're cutting for them. Finally, here's how the precon looks like with all the swaps made. The deck is now way more powerful thanks to a slimmer mana curve, stronger finishers, better targeted removal, and more efficient card draw. And that's it for my Silverquill Statement $20 precon upgrade. We've just completed every single precon, and now it's time to go back to building decks from scratch. So until next time, friends, see ya! Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking the like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, make sure to click the subscribe button. And if you want to watch similar videos, click on the links appearing on screen right now.